I was standing outside a diner in downtown Chicago, freezing in the wind, looking for Rocky Balboa. Instead, I got a guy who looked like he hadn't seen a gym since the Carter administration, wearing a leather jacket that smelled faintly of mothballs and despair. But his lack of resemblance to Sylvester Stallone? That was genuinely the least offensive part of the night. If you've ever tried to date after a divorce, you know how fragile you feel. Now imagine doing it before the internet, relying on a newspaper ad, and ending up trapped in a booth with a guy who thought a romantic dinner included shadowboxing the waiter. Let me set the scene. It was a few years back, pre-Tinder, pre-smartphones. I was fresh out of my marriage, the ink on the divorce papers was barely dry, and my friends were pushing me to get back out there. So I did what single people in Chicago did back then. I turned to the love connection section of the newspaper. I placed a very normal, unassuming ad. A few days later, I get a message from Tony. On the phone, Tony was actually charming. He asked questions about me, he made me laugh, and when I asked him to describe himself, he confidently said, "People tell me I'm a dead ringer for Sylvester Stallone." My post-divorce self was thinking, "Okay, Rocky, I see you. Let's get some deep dish." So the night of the date arrives. We agreed to meet outside the restaurant. I'm looking around for a muscular Italian stallion. Then a guy approaches me. He's at least 4 inches shorter than me, sporting an aggressively receding hairline and wearing sunglasses. At night, in Chicago. In the winter. I tried to be open-minded. I really did. I thought, okay, maybe he meant Stallone in the movie Copland where he gained all that weight. We sit down and the illusion completely shatters. First, he doesn't let me look at the menu. He tells me, "I know what women like," and orders for both of us. Spoiler alert, not all women love a heaping plate of raw oysters. Then the conversation starts. Remember the charming guy on the phone? Gone. Replaced by a man who spent 45 uninterrupted minutes talking about his ex-wife's unreasonable expectation that he hold down a steady job. But the absolute breaking point happened when the check came. Ugh. Remember, this is the guy who bragged about his looks, ordered my food, and talked about himself the entire night. The waiter drops the leather booklet on the table. Sylvester looks at it, looks at me, and slides it across the table. He says, and I quote, "I left my wallet in my other leather jacket. You got this, right, babe?" I was stunned. I had just paid for my own hostage situation. But I didn't just quietly pay and leave. Oh no. The post-divorce fed-up version of me finally snapped. I took out exactly enough cash to cover my half of the oysters I didn't eat, slapped it on the table and said, "Looks like you're washing dishes tonight, Rocky." I walked out into the freezing Chicago wind, and honestly, I started laughing. It was a terrible date, but it was exactly the reality check I needed. It taught me that getting back out there is going to be messy, but I had survived a divorce, so I could certainly survive a bad date with a cheapskate. I never saw him again, though I like to think he's still out there somewhere, shadowboxing in a Denny's parking lot. Now it's your turn. Tell me I'm not alone. What is the absolute worst, most delusional lie someone has ever told you on a first date? Let me know in the comments, and I'll see you later.